What I have is a block of basswood and carbon paper to transfer the pattern, and I have the pattern. I'm just going to trace the pattern now. The grain is running vertically, and the type of wood is basswood. And that should be good enough that we can follow. We're going to be doing a little review of the fundamentals of wood carving in this video. And we're going to talk a lot about grain, looking at this grain is running vertically here. And grain in wood is very much like the bristles on a brush. So that's how to keep in mind what direction to go. I've cut these bristles on an angle so it can better demonstrate what we're going to try to show. So the pear is going to be raised out of the wood. So this here is the this brush will represent the pear being raised off the wood, and we need to cut around to make a stop cut up next to the pattern so we can cut the background down. So the right direction to go for that is in coming around this direction. And the reason why is if we're cutting in this direction, the wood has, each fiber has the support of the next fiber, where the reverse, if you're going to come around in this direction, you're going to be pulling out the fibers, so it's more prone to splitting. So as you're coming up to the top of this here pear, your direction is going to be that way. Now to come up this other side, we have to flip the brush over this way, and this is the right direction to come up. Coming down this direction again would pull the fibers apart. So that is the right direction. So as we look at this here pear, we can see that the right direction from this point right here going up is all going to be in that direction. And then when we flip it over like this and look at the bottom of the pear, then the right direction is coming around here. So this is the point that we're changing right here. So we change direction. So this is coming in a downward direction. Now going across grain makes very little difference. You are going to get about the same cut. You won't be pulling out any of the fibers like this because you're going straight across the grain. So one fiber is being supported by the other. On this side here, it probably wouldn't make any difference going upwards all the way here, and this should be the dividing line here. So this is the upward direction, and then you turn the brush over, and then this is coming in the downward direction like this, all the way down to the bottom like that. So for the stem, the same thing applies. If we're going to go up, this is the upward direction here. The fibers are in that direction. You're going to come up on this side, and then the fibers will be supported if you're going to come down in this direction on the other side. If you're going to come up on this side, what's going to happen is, especially if you cut this side first, it'll split out. So most of the time when something splits out when you're carving, you're going in the wrong direction for that reason. So let's take the V tool. That's the tool we're going to start with. So the V tool is a tool that is shaped like the letter V, and you just take it, and I'm going to start right down in this area here, and my one wing of the V tool is right up against the pencil line, and I'm not trying to go very deep. I'm just coming right up the side. You can see what a nice curl that's making. So that's my first stop cut. If I want to go a little deeper, I can do it again. Now here I took a little bit of the line off. That's okay. I wasn't that far away from the line. So what I'm doing is right hand carving coming up this side to where this hand here is my control hand. It controls the angle and it controls how much pressure I'm putting forward on the chisel. This other hand here, my right hand, is the power hand. So the control hand is the left hand that sits right onto the piece. And the power hand's job is to do the pushing. So that comes up on this direction, and the control hand pushes back and regulates the pressure. It controls the angle, and it does the steering. I'm also steering with the right hand too as I'm coming up. So now to carve left hand, you're just going to switch the role. So now your right hand becomes the control and your left hand becomes the power. And again, we're going to come up this side here. So that's right and left hand carving. So now we have the bottom of the pear to do, so I'll just follow the right direction, and I can continue over here a ways to about there, and then come down on the other side. Again, I couldn't go up to about there. Then come down on this side again. So that's our first pass with the stop cut. And now we can take a chisel. What I'm going to use, this is a number 4 sweep. That's fairly straight, as you can see, and it's called a fishtail because it fans out like a fish's tail. And now we're going to start removing the background. And what we have to do is reverse the flow, because now I want this background to have a nice smooth cut, and I want it to be dished down. So the background then has to be cut in exactly the opposite direction, because I'm going to be coming here with my high spot up here where the brush is, and again I'm coming around this way. So I have to come now in that direction, in that direction, and in the bottom coming up from this direction and in that direction. So it's just the opposite of when I was trying to keep the smooth side of the cut against a raised pear. Now I want the smooth side of the cut against the background. So I'm going to cut right down to the bottom or close to the bottom of my stop cut. If you go below your stop cut, then you're going to have a fuzzy carving. You're going to have ends that are straggly and little whiskers that are sticking up. So all you're doing is you're taking down the background far enough to where you can go back and use the V-tool to make the stop cut deeper. So the first thing before we start doing any of the pear itself, the contouring of the pear, I generally try to get the background down to depth first. That gives me a better idea of how much contour I need to put into the pear. So it's a matter of repeating these steps over and over again. So like we started before with the stop cut, I'm back with the V tool and just coming right up along that edge. This applies to any style of carving. Whether you're carving in the round or carving a relief, this is a relief carving. Carving in the round, you have to be mindful of the grain and what direction you're going, or you're going to split something out. I have switched to a wider chisel. This is a number 3 sweep, almost flat, and I try to pick the chisel, the tool that's going to match the shape I'm trying to carve. So this being a fairly flat background, I'm using a fairly flat chisel. Try to keep your carving as clean as possible. To show you a little demonstration with the mallet, I've got a 12-ounce mallet here, and I'm back to the V tool, going to make the stop cuts a little bit deeper. So I am using now the mallet to power the chisel through. You don't do right and left hand carving with a mallet. You just cross over with your hands. So this mallet here I'm using right now, I'm using it for power. A mallet can also be used for control. If you've got a nice tight little line you want to do, and if you go by hand, you might slip with hand. It might slip like that when it hits a certain part of the grain. The mallet can be used for control. So those are the two purposes of the mallet, to have power and to have control. So I'm going to go about halfway through the piece. I'm dishing it out so my perimeter is the original thickness, and then I'm going to take everything down to about halfway, maybe a little less on the bottom. Then that'll make it stand out really nice. You can see when I'm coming around here, that it's going up against the grain a little bit. Let me bring it down here so you can see a little bit more of my shadows. You can see some of the roughness. Well, that's time now to change the direction. So I come from the other direction, and that will make a smoother cut then. So you watch what you're cutting, because the grain doesn't always run real flat. Sometimes the grain is plunging this way. So the general rules that I showed you with the arrow apply if the grain is fairly flat, but you might run into pieces of wood. You will run into pieces of wood that you're going to have to just feel what direction the grain is going. So I'm just kind of cutting a cross grain here. Doesn't make any difference what direction I'm going in. So it doesn't take that much time to keep your carving clean, so it's not all roughed up. And it sure saves a lot of time. Areas, it's real important to keep the sides vertical. If you undercut it, by the time you take off the stock and round it, it's going to be a different shape. The same as if you slant the sides this way. So these have to be vertical, because these lines of the pattern, that was the size of the piece down at the background. So here I deviated from the pattern a little bit because I thought maybe I'd make that a little bit round. So if you were doing a face or something and had a nose drawn, and if you didn't keep it vertical going down to where it originated from, then that would greatly change, so it wouldn't be like the drawing at all. So to contour the pear, we'll decide that this area is going to be the highest, so I won't take anything off of that and roll everything down. Eventually I will, because I don't want any flat spots on it. And this area in here is also going to be the high point. So I'm going to take the number 3 sweep, and this is about a 1-inch wide, and I'm just going to start coming around the side. Now you notice the direction that I'm going, if I come down in this direction, I'm going to be splitting off the wood, so with the way the grain is. So remember the example of the paintbrush, to where this is the proper direction to go, and to go down on the wood, because you're compressing the fibers down. Now you see how I've gone down, and this here I can tell if I push forward I might be too deep. So I need to come from the top. Again, on this side I will do the same. So I'm starting right from this point. When we worked the background down, that was the line I made where we switched directions. So when you're looking at a circle carving, let's say this pair when we were beginning, and this was a circle that we were going to just carve a circle that's raised. You divide that circle into 4 quadrants, because you're going to have to change direction 4 times. Picturing along this pair, we went in this direction, we come up in this direction from the other side. Down here on the bottom we came in this direction, and down on this side we come in that direction. So that was for doing the edges, the stop cuts, and now for the contouring we're doing essentially the same. Where it's going to change a little bit is we're going to have a low level in here, and we need to dish down on one side and then dish down from this side. So this side will be coming down like here, and the top side is coming down like that. And I'm going to utilize almost all my height that I have by taking the side almost right down to the background. Now this gouge has got a little bit of a radius to it, and you can use a gouge in 3 directions. This is the direction that you normally use it. You can use it to plunge cut. So let's say we were going to make our stop cuts instead of with a V-tool. We would come and we would plunge cut with this down. Well, then you would match the radius to the curve. So as we would get into a tighter radius up here, then I would get a different sweep that would match that. So that's the second way of using the tool. So you have the first way, which is right side up. You have coming right down for a plunge cut. And the third way is upside down. So we're trying to make it curve like this. So it stands to reason that we would start our rounding off pretty good by using the chisel upside down. So that's the third mode of operation for the chisel. So then we'll start making this area right in here. Now I'm using it right side up this time, so the wings don't dig in. Now this area here, it's difficult when you're going down on this side to match exactly with the cut coming from the other side, but I would encourage you to practice that. Tool control is pretty important. So let's say that you're having real difficulty cleaning it up. You can always take a, so here's another gouge. This here is a number 5 sweep gouge, so it's got a little more of a radius to it, a little tighter radius. If you had trouble blending that in here, you would come along and clean it up this way. So what we're going to do is continue the contouring around the bottom and the top, just exactly the way as I was doing in the sides. So I'm just kind of doing the final cleanup. I'm not going to do any sanding on it because I like to leave a few of the tool marks to show that it was hand done. and to show the skill of the carver. I'm making this radius a lot shallower. This radius here is pretty tight up here, but this is setting on the bottom on the ground here, or setting on something. So I'm just trying to make it just feel just a little bit like it's setting down, not like it's floating in air. There I have the original top surface here. These two areas here are the original top surface, and just blow out a few of the chips, and I think it's ready to put some finish on it. Now to add a little bit of color, I'm using colored pencil, and this is the Prisma color, colored pencil. And I can put on a little bit of the, let's say we're going to put in the green, and you see how the high points of my chisel, those planes, kind of get dark right up in there. So I even that out with a little bit of water. So I take the just plain water, and I use a stiff, this is kind of a wore out stiff oil brush, the white bristle oil brush, and I wet that, and I just go in there and I scrub that, and that kind of evens the color out. Now, even when it's wet, you can go in there and still touch it more. So if you got some areas you need to darken a little bit more, or do a little bit more shading and blending. And notice there's almost no color that comes off into the water. We're just kind of pushing the color and smearing the color around, blending it in. So it's a nice way to blend colors. So between the yellow and the green, that's the two colors mainly I'm going to use, and then I will use some for some of the brown, maybe a darker green for the shadow underneath. And let's say you make a mistake, so you take your eraser and you just erase it. See? And if it's really a bad mistake, then you just carve it over again. The background, I'm just going to put a clear coat of varnish on. And I will put a clear coat of varnish over this when I get the color added to it. Some of that yellow in the background that I put on there is coming out nice. Don't use a good brush for this because you're really kind of abusing the brush. Really scrubbing the bristles, bending them over pretty bad. Just throw some other colors in there, like a little canary yellow. And then maybe a little bit of brown. We need brown on the stem here. And we can deepen that shadow in this, where the stem is going. Make a little bit of brown down here. Touch a little brown in some of these other places. Another way to blend is using a paper towel. So you can take a paper towel instead of your brush, let's say in wide areas, and you just want to scrub that in. And if you get a little bit on the background, you can go back with your chisel and just cut that background a little bit more. I'm going to wait till that dries and see how. So I'm just cleaning up the background. Any of the coloring that I got on the background is what I'm taking off right now. So the water is dry from the colored pencil, and I'm going to put a coat of clear varnish on it. So I am using just a polyurethane clear varnish, being a little careful when I wipe it on because I can still smear the pencil. Thank you for watching.